Welcome to Culinary Curiosities, where today we're about to embark on a myth-busting journey that's spicier than a jalapeno in a salsa contest. We've got 10 cooking myths lined up, and we're armed with enough culinary knowledge to make Gordon Ramsay blush. So put on your aprons, folks, because we're about to dive into a culinary adventure that will leave your taste buds bewildered and your oven begging for mercy. Get ready to separate the sizzlin truth from the half-baked lies and let the culinary revolution begin. Beginning with number 10, one that has nonnas turning in their graves. All Italians are begging you, please don't rinse your pasta. It's true that rinsing your pasta with cold water after you strain it will stop the cooking process. But it'll also wash away all the starch that coats the surface of each piece, which is what helps the sauce stick to your spaghetti and linguine. Maybe worst of all, rinsing your pasta will also result in a lukewarm meal. Instead, undercook your pasta just a tiny bit. When you taste it, you shouldn't be biting into floury or tough uncooked pasta, but it can be a bit chewier than how you want the end result. This is what's called al dente, which means sticks to the teeth. Bonus Nonna tip. If you strain out the water, be sure to keep a mug of pasta water to mix in with your sauce. The starch from the pasta water gives cohesion to the dish and makes the sauce silky. It won't water it down as much as you think. On to myth number 9. Baking soda never goes bad. Do you have that box of baking soda in your pantry that you had since you moved into that house, 3 years ago? Toss it out! Baking soda is a leavening agent that creates a chemical reaction, creating air in whatever it is you're cooking. Though it'll never expire and become dangerous to eat, it does become less potent over time. It'll really only last for about, 6 months after opening before it starts losing its powers. You can test your baking soda by mixing a little bit of baking soda with 2 times as much vinegar. If it fizzles like mad, it's still good. If the fizz is weak and uninspiring, that's also what'll happen in your food. Time to toss it out and get a new box. At number 8, another pasta-related lie. Salt slashes pasta cooking time. We think this may be a chemical fact gone wild. Adding salt to water would change the boiling point, but only when adding cups and cups of salt would you really notice a difference. If you're adding salt to your pasta water, do it for the flavor, not the supposed reduction in cooking time. Remember, salty like the sea for dried pasta. For fresh pasta, since it'll only be in water for a couple of minutes, should be even saltier. The 7th myth, raw tomatoes are healthier than cooked ones. A salad always feels like the healthy option, but in fact, a homemade pasta or pizza could be just as healthy of a use of tomatoes as any. When tomatoes are cooked, especially with a bit of olive oil, the antioxidant Lycopene becomes easier for our body to absorb. This is also the case in processed tomato products like tomato paste and ketchup, but with added sugars and preservatives. The healthiest way to eat a tomato is whatever you want to do with it from scratch. Coming at you with myth number 6, flour needs to be sifted. Though flour can get compacted and transport over time, sifting it isn't usually worth the effort. A quick whisking with the wire whisk is going to fluff up the flour and break up any chunks and takes much less time. This is one of those shortcuts that is well worth it in the end. And here comes myth number 5, salt is salt. It doesn't matter what kind you use. Throw this myth out and you are definitely going to improve your cooking. Different salts come from different places and different collection methods, which affects their shape and the minerals they contain, which affects the taste, use, and you guessed it, nutrition. Now, your basic table salt or iodized salt is mined from underground deposits and processed to remove all the minerals besides salt for consistency of shape and taste. This means it contains no beneficial minerals like natural salts do. This type of salt is brilliant for baking when you need very fine grains of salt so that you avoid any salty bites. It can also be used when you need to quickly dissolve salt in a liquid. Otherwise, take the table salt off of your table. Instead, replace it with what chefs call finishing salt. This salt, often high-grade flaky sea salt such as the brand Mundane, is rich in minerals and, most importantly, has a delicate and irregular crystal structure, which gives texture and has a much more satisfying distribution of flavor for topping a dish. Other types of salt are sea salt, which comes from evaporating seawater, or Himalayan pink salt, which is mined from ancient sea salt deposits and contains trace minerals, giving it a pink hue. To decide which type of salt to use, we have to think about the three main stages of cooking. There's the prep stage, the cooking stage, and the finishing stage. For the prep stage, it really depends on what you're cooking. When seasoning meat, for example, opt for a coarse salt like kosher salt. It's free from additives and sticks to meat evenly. If you're baking or making a soup or anything liquidy that you would want the salt to dissolve quickly and evenly in, use plain old table salt. The crystals are small and uniform, so they're going to dissolve evenly in a liquid or mixed into a batter. This is also the stage where you would use flavored salts for marinating or flavoring savory foods. And during the cooking process, salt enhances flavors and helps with the breakdown of proteins. Coarse salts, such as kosher salt or sea salt, are ideal, adding texture and allowing for better control of seasoning. Their medium-sized crystals make it easier to sprinkle or rub onto the food. Before you serve the food or at the table, grab a nice finishing salt like mundane, or specialty salts like smoked sea salt or black volcanic salt for the best flavor and a bit of showing off. Here comes myth number 4. Sharp knives are more likely to cut you. Although a sharp knife can really do some serious damage, a sharper blade is much easier to control and use than a dull knife. Don't be afraid to sharpen that knife and glide through those onions. Just remember to tuck your fingers in and you'll be safe and sound. We're getting closer to the number 1 myth with myth number 3. Does storing bread in the fridge prevent staleness? It doesn't! Keeping bread in the fridge might prevent mold from growing, but putting bread in the refrigerator actually causes staleness to occur more quickly. There are 2 main mechanisms at play that cause bread to turn stale: moisture movement and a little something called starch retrogradation. Starch retrogradation is when certain molecules in the starch move around, causing them to recrystallize. This is what makes the bread become hard, not dryness. This process happens most quickly just above freezing temps, so putting bread in your fridge is only a surefire way to make it stale as fast as possible. Alright, the anticipation is building and we're almost there, folks. What is myth number 2, you ask? Keeping a pit in your avocado keeps it from browning. We wish the pit had magic powers to keep your guacamole bright and fresh for days, but we've got some bad news for you. The browning effect on your avocado is the result of oxidation, which happens when a natural compound meets oxygen coming from the air or from water. It is true that the pit may help to cover some of the surface area of the avocado, keeping it from oxidizing. But your best option, though, is to cover the whole thing with plastic wrap, making sure it's in contact with all of the surface. Or you can go with our favorite solution, to just eat the whole thing in one go. Alright, and here we are, we have arrived at our final destination. The number 1 myth that you've all been waiting for. To make your chili less spicy, remove the fiery seeds. This one is just absolutely false. The chemical that makes pepper spicy is in the pith, the whitish part that connects the seeds to the fruit. If you haven't already done so, be sure to check out our video on the top 10 hottest peppers in the world and all the sizzling facts about how extreme spice can almost be lethal. And from all of us over here, thank you so very much for joining us on this edition of Culinary Curiosities Myth Busting. Which myths had you fooled? Join us next time for more discoveries about the gastronomical world around us.